What's going on, podcast listeners? My name is Michael Chernow. I am a restaurateur and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I am truly obsessed with living a life better than yesterday through wellness, fitness, and good vibes. I've always wondered if the drive to succeed is something we are born with, or if it's something that is made over time through grit, drive, and perseverance. I get to answer that question exactly, and the goal of this podcast is to talk with people that have absolutely crushed it in life and have inspired me to do the same. This is Born or Made. Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I have a guy on the show today who truly inspired me the minute I opened up his book for the first time. Mike Matthews is a New York Times best-selling health and fitness author, obviously knows his way around the gym. He is also the founder of Legion Athletics, which is the #1 natural supplement company on the market today. He wrote a book called Bigger, Leaner, Stronger in 2012 that I think rocked everybody's world. And it certainly rocked my world. He literally, with a machete, just hacked through all the BS that the health and fitness industry sort of throws at us to just get us to spend money and waste time and try diets and try supplements and try workouts and try movements that really don't actually have any scientific data that proves them to work. He did an enormous amount of research, which I can't wait to get into with him, to really find out what is real and what is bullshit, which is incredible. He's sold millions of copies of not only Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, but then he started writing more books, Thinner, Leaner, Stronger. Is that right? Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, Mike?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Because a lot of women were reading Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and then asked and saying, hey, I don't really want to get bigger, but a lot of this sounds like it would apply to me. So it became clear that I should take Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and adapt it for women. So that's how that came about.
So I'm super excited to introduce Mike Matthews to the show and get his story. And I've got a bunch of questions for him, obviously, because as you guys know, if you listen to the show at this point, I'm an animal when it comes to fitness and nutrition. And this is the guy that I've been wanting to get on here to just prod and just get all the answers, not only for me, but for you
Prod
guys.
Me.
I'm going to prod you, brother.
Mike,
welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Why don't you just give us a little intro, and then I'll sort of tell you what we're gonna do, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah. So, I guess you've kind of summarized it. I wrote a book, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, 2012. Published that. I didn't have any connections in the industry, or I had no name recognition. I was just a dude who wrote a book, really, and I had no idea if anyone was even going to buy it. I don't know. I self-published it because I was like, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of an agent or a publisher, why would they even want to talk to me? Because unless you're into working out, you can't really appreciate the information. If you're just an agent who doesn't lift weights, or if you're not into the body composition game or recreational bodybuilding, it's all just kind of Greek to you. You're like, oh, I don't know, whatever. It sounds different, I guess. So I published it, and it sold maybe 20 copies the first month. And I was excited. I was like, oh, somebody actually bought the book. I was kind of expecting it to just be a bunch of zeros and that's it. And be like, oh, well, I tried. Next. And then by the end of that year, it was selling thousands of copies a month. I saw that there was an opportunity here where I could write more books. And I felt that even that was a little bit early, like Legion started in 2014. But even at that time, I saw an opportunity that I could also create a sports supplement company, and really primarily to scratch my own itch, to make the stuff that I wish other people just would have been making. And if there was some other company, if Legion would have already existed, I probably just would have went to them and said, hey, you're doing exactly what I would do. Can we work together in some way? And
one thing, I just want to stop you there for 1 second.
Yeah.
The thing that I love about that is, for the first half of your book, you just smash supplement company, supplements in general. You're just 95% of them are BS and don't work. And then when you get into your sort of, discussing you launching your own, you're like, you don't have to, you don't have to take supplements at all. Here, hands down. But after my research, there are a few things that actually work to help you build muscle and lose fat. Just a few. That said, you do not have to use them. And when you said that, it was so disarming for me that I was like, I've got to check out Legion. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that because I thought that was just like real honest, real transparent. You're not, you're obviously a marketer and you're trying to convert no matter what because you're in business, but you're being very, very real. You're like, this stuff, you don't need it. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and it's funny. That was one of those things that is completely true and is good marketing. So it was nice that it worked out that way. And obviously that message has resonated with many other people too, and many other smart people, people who are savvy in the fitness space. Like they're more sophisticated than the entry level supplement buyer who is not stupid. They're just, you have a lot of people who are uninformed. And so they go and let's say they see a fat loss product that claims that they're going to lose 20 pounds in their first month. They may be a smart person, but they're like, I don't know anything about this. I don't know, maybe. Sure, why not? It's $30. I'll try it. And I understand that. I could totally understand. It'd be if you or I were getting into something that we knew nothing about and we're just getting into it initially and we're seeing all these wild marketing claims. I can relate to it a little bit in golf, right? Which is something I don't give too much time to, but is one of my few hobbies that I care about, right? And there are so many, it's very similar in that there are a lot of gimmicks that are marketed to golfers to hit the ball better, straighter, longer.
Things you can buy.
Yeah. It's either things that you use when you practice, like a rubber band thing that you put around your arms, or there are some technological things, some apps that you video your swing and then it's supposed to give you tips, or there's the marketing for the equipment itself, where this driver you're supposed to be able to hit it longer and straighter, this ball, et cetera, et cetera. And even as I would say I'm a good marketer and I understand that I understand the game. I still, in the beginning when I was getting into it, I had to consciously resist the urge to want to try some of these things because some of the pitches are good, right? And so I understand that. I understand then for people who are just getting into fitness and they hear a very convincing pitch and it seems to be very science-based and all the ingredients are supposedly proven to do everything that the marketer is claiming. And so then they go, okay, fine, whatever, it's $30. But that only happens maybe, I don't know, 1, 2, max 3 times, where then it doesn't deliver. And that person has now become a little bit more sophisticated as a consumer. And so now when they see those types of claims, any sort of magic bullet, quick fix type of product, they're immediately turned off by it. And so I knew that if I was going to go into supplements and I was going to do it the way I wanted to and promote it honestly, I'm actually missing out on a large segment of the market, which is that more entry-level, unsophisticated consumer who's just looking for the quick fix. And that demand will always be there. Now, more and more people are becoming more and more educated as consumers, and there are more and more sophisticated consumers out there. But I would say it's certainly still the minority as far as the overall market. So from a purely business, like mercenary, just trying to make money perspective, the way I'm going about it is not the best way. But as far as actually doing it honestly, and let's just say treating consumers the way that I would want to be treated, I'm doing it the right way, and it is doing well financially as well. But it's just interesting, again, these are things that in the beginning, there was not an option for me personally. I was not going to make some BS line of supplements and just lie to sell them. And so I was like, well, whatever. I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it. And I have a big enough following that I'm not going to get stuck with these products. Like maybe the company doesn't go that far, but I'm not going to lose a bunch of money on it. So might as well.
And so now Legion is crushing. I just started a contest prep for a bodybuilding show in October. I always have a coach no matter what I'm doing, whether it's business, fitness, whatever. I like to have a coach just to not motivate me because I'm like a self-starting guy, but I love having somebody. I love learning and I love guidance, and the coach that I'm working with right now is actually an affiliate of Legion. It's interesting how that worked out. So
synchronicity.
Yeah. So you wrote this book in 2012, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. Obviously, very smart marketing in terms of just the name of the book, right? Like most dudes that are flipping through Men's Health magazine, they see a page in the middle that says Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. They're all going to kind of stop. I've known of your book for a long time. And unfortunately, because of the work that my life as a restaurateur, it's been so hard for me to just get any reading done. And so in this quarantine, I have been able to put down some books that I've been looking to read for some time. And one of the first books that I read in the beginning of this thing was Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. And absolutely, totally wish I would have read it years ago when you launched it, because
that was the original idea for the book. Is here's the book I wish someone would have just given me back when I was 17, getting into lifting weights.
You wrote the book, but what I really want to do is I kind of want to go before the book. I want to know what it was like for Mike Matthews, because you're obviously you're a bit of a juggernaut in the world that you exist in. You're everything that you're putting out there is getting a lot of attention, and you're incredibly articulate in the way you deliver this content and information on a regular basis. And I think that is very unique. I like to dive into stories of people like you to try to understand whether you were born with an inherent/innate ability to sort of do what you do, or if you just like figured out that this was something you were passionate about and just grinded hard every day to get to where you're at. And so I think it's a really cool conversation. In an ideal world, we're going back to as early as you can remember. Let's talk about Mike as a child and understand what it was like coming up.
I would say, there wasn't anything particularly exceptional in terms of my childhood. Grew up middle class. My dad was a hard worker, and he did achieve quite a bit of success later in my life. Probably by the time I was 16, he was a successful entrepreneur. But in the beginning, we had nothing. So he was a hard worker, and he always provided. And there weren't any major issues. But we were living in Los Angeles, and a kid going to school, had friends and whatever, and maybe relevant to this discussion is as far as born versus made. I've always been a pretty good student, and that's something that was at least probably half inborn. I've always liked learning, and I've always done well in school. But there's a point where that did start to become also, there is an element of nurture, because I became interested in getting better at learning. So I started to learn how to learn better. And of course that becomes a positive feedback loop, right? And
let's unpack that. Let's unpack that for a sec. So when you say you started to learn, or you started to want to learn how to learn better, what do you mean? Were you literally trying to figure out strategies to help you either be more efficient in learning, or what did that look like?
No, I'd say initially it was primarily understanding how to be able to how to better reach a deep understanding of whatever it is I'm trying to learn. And ultimately, most of the learning that at least was self-directed had some sort of practical element to it. Although I also have always liked history, for example, even though depending on how you want to look at it, you can take some practical takeaways from history, depending on your circumstances. But then there's also just even though it's completely abstract, there's just the appeal of learning about things that happened in the past that are interesting, learning about interesting people. And so it was initially, okay, how do because as far as efficiency goes, like stuff like speed reading, I'm not interested in. Ironically, the way that I study or the way that I learn is probably slower than many people. But that's by design. I could get through stuff faster, but I wouldn't understand it as well, which means I wouldn't retain the information as well, and I wouldn't be able to apply it as well, and ultimately I wouldn't get the results that I'm after. And so, to give you an example, to be specific, is I am a word nerd, I guess you could say. I spend a lot of time in the dictionary when I'm reading. And I believe very strongly I've written about this, and there was a little bit of research that was done on this back in the 30s or 40s that it showed it's not a causation, but it showed a correlation between vocabulary size and the level to which people rose in corporate positions, right? So like what the researchers found is that the one factor that seemed to be most correlated with whether someone reached the sea level or not was their vocabulary. And there are some other anecdotal bits and pieces that suggest that there might be something to that. And in my experience, what I can say very practically is so somebody had some very specific ideas they wanted to communicate to you, and this is particularly important in the case of application, right? So if somebody's trying to teach you how to do something that they know how to do well, and they've taken the time to codify their system, talk about bigger, leaner, stronger, right? How to eat and how to train and how to supplement. And the person has specific ideas, and they used specific words, and they may have misused words here and there, but often that's not the case. Often they were able to transfer their concepts into words fairly accurately, and then you get the words, and now you have to you're trying to accomplish that mind meld, right? So by your understanding of the words, how close are you going to get to their original concept? We've already lost a bit of the original concept because of the limitations of language and people's understanding of words in the first place. But then if you, as the receiver of this message, are unable to understand the many of the words that they use the way that they intended them, which should be the dictionary definition, not some definition invented just out of whole cloth or invented by looking at other uses. We should have a standardized method of saying what words mean, but that's another discussion. Then you might only get to 50% of comprehension of the original concepts that they wanted to communicate to you. And therefore, when you go and try to use that information, you might get less than 50% of the results, because what if in the 50% that you didn't fully understand the way that they wanted you to understand it, maybe half of that you really didn't get it, and in that maybe that's like half of the fundamentals were what really didn't click. And so then when you try to go again get results, it all just falls apart. And so that's something that, I probably started when I was 9 or 10, taking dictionaries seriously and checking words when I'm reading. If I wasn't sure, like if somebody were to ask me, what does that word mean? If I couldn't give a good definition, then if in my mind, if I'm kind of like stumbling around, I guess it's kind of like, no, then I would just go to the dictionary and check it out and make some sentences with it, see how I would use it. And so that's something I've been doing. I'm 36 now, and that's something I've been doing religiously, like to the point where if I am watching a movie and somebody says a word I don't know, I go look at it in the dictionary.
Wow.
Because not because I'm afraid of not knowing words. No, I see it as an opportunity to add another word to my vocabulary, which is obviously directly relevant to a lot of my work, which is writing, and whether it's writing articles, writing books, writing scripts or outlines for podcasts or whatever. So there is a direct benefit there. But I think there's also a less tangible benefit that I've just been describing, in that the more words I understand accurately, the better student I am, and the better student I am, the more knowledge I can gain, and the more knowledge I can gain, the more confidence I'm going to have, and the more I'm going to be able to do, and the more I can do, the more confident I get, and then the more I can do from that. So that's an example of something that is definitely a made thing, right? I mean, it's been.
But can I say
who knows how
something
many thousands of hours I've spent on this since I was like 9 years old. You know what I mean?
Yes, I 1,000% that is not something you were born with, right? However, I do believe that the desire to want to do that is probably something you can't explain necessarily outside of, because most people, I would say the majority of the population, don't think that way. Don't, if they hear a word that they don't understand, 9 out of 10 people just walk right by it. I also believe, because of my experience as a business person and entrepreneur, that there are two types of people. There are, and you might have some research or studies that you know about that have dissected this, but there are people that are creative, that are driven, or that are sort of walking through life thinking creatively and sort of more of an emotional intelligence person. And then there are people that are practical and logistical, and IQ definitely makes more of an impact in their lives. There are people that can retain information really, really well, and they tend to be the logistical, practical thinkers. And then there are people that sort of go with their gut more than actually going to any sort of research study. And so I also believe that there are those two different types of people, like really, not just saying that, like actually. My business partner at the meatball shop, Dan Holzman, is one of the, in terms of IQ, one of the smartest guys I know. He's very much like you in terms of what he likes to read and learn about, and his ability to retain information is unbelievable. Like, if he's reading something that actually interests him, and it could be like the Byzantine Empire, which most people would not be super excited about, but for him, that happens to be a topic that he really enjoys to learn about. He is able to retain it and recite it back 10 years after he read it, because of that. That's how much it interests him. And so I do believe that there are those. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think personality tests, Myers-Briggs, stuff like that's been around for a while, would bear that out. However, I think that a person who maybe doesn't have that creative spark inherently, I think that it can be learned. I actually just had posted a quote from a book called Thinker Toys that you might find fun if you're the creative side of your business partnership, because it has a bunch of creative exercises for just ideation and different ways to look at problems, and how to come up with new and good ideas for your business. And it's a pretty cool book. But in that book, the quote, I just paraphrasing, is that the secret to being an idea person is to come up with ideas. Like, do the work of coming up with ideas, and in time it will get easier and you will become more creative. I do think it can be learned. Now, where I would agree with you, and I'd say the the flip side of that is true too. Somebody who has always been able to come up with really interesting new ideas. They've always just had that imagination, that active imagination. Maybe they haven't been a great student. Maybe they struggle with retaining information. I think that person can also, through doing the right work, can certainly get good at the other side of the brain, so to speak. I know it's like a debunked theory now, but a lot of people have at least heard of that analogy, the left brain, right brain theory. And so that's, yeah, I think where I would agree with you though is to reach maybe the level of like extraordinary, where somebody is just genius is maybe a bit much of a word, but is just very, very good creatively. Maybe there is a bit of a born element in that, where if somebody comes into this world with very little, it's not just creativity, but I also see it in the sense of aesthetic sensibilities. Like in creative fields, they can't even point out what's good, let alone create it. You know what I mean? They just don't have it. They don't have, and I know people like that. And ironically, like one guy I'm thinking of, very smart, high IQ, and hard worker, but no aesthetic sense whatsoever. And so it's interesting. Those people are out there. However, I still believe, though, even in his case, if he had the right routine, so to speak, that in time he could hone that part of him and make it, take it from what I would probably rate a 0. maybe I'd give him a 0.5, take it up to like a 5 or a 6. I do believe that. And I think the other way around, where if you have like a 9 out of 10 or 10/10 creative who just struggles to get through a book for the life of them, I think if you give them the right tools, they could get a lot better in that regard.
All through high school, you were doing what?
Just doing I don't know, doing what you do, right? So I
were you lifting weights and
so I played ice hockey. I got into street hockey when I was probably 9 or 10, and then was obsessed with that, and then that led to ice hockey, and then got obsessed with that. So did that. I didn't get into lifting weights until after ice hockey, just because it never even occurred to me, and I liked playing hockey so much I wouldn't have. Well, I guess whatever. I was a teenager, so I could have made the time, but I would pretty much, I was in school, and then I'd be playing street hockey with my friends. Then I was doing some roller hockey and then ice hockey. So a lot of my time went into hockey. And I wouldn't take spring breaks or summer breaks from school. I would just study. And so by the time I was like 16, I had enough credits to graduate from high school. So I did that. And then I was 16, and I'm like, okay, I don't, like, high school is done. I have my little diploma. What do I do now? So at this point now, my dad is, he's a pretty successful entrepreneur. And so the question is, should I go to college? Maybe not right now, because it'd be a bit random at my age, but, or should I just start working and find out, what do I like enough to want to pursue? Because at the time, the idea of just having a business that sells widgets for a profit seemed really unappealing to me, ironically, because I've always had a creative streak in me, and my original interest in writing was fiction, for example. I wrote a fiction novel just on a whim, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And that's something I'll probably actually get to in my next life. I don't want to give it any time right now. Now, having a couple of businesses, I actually have more appreciation for I really could say the art of building a business, and particularly on the marketing side of things, because that is a very creative activity. And so at that time, I spoke to my dad, and I spoke to some successful friends of his to get their opinion on, okay, so if I'm interested in being an entrepreneur, ultimately I probably want to have my own business. I don't know what that would be yet. Does it make sense for me to go to college? And the consensus was no. Unless you're going to go to maybe an Ivy League school and you're going there for the network, you're going there to meet people who come from a lot of money and who have a lot of connections so that you can then tap into when you do get into business, it's probably not worth it to just go get like a marketing degree or a business degree or some other degree that you're not going to really use. It would be better to just start working and find what field you are interested in, what activities you like, and then go from there. And so that's what I did. I started working. I worked in my dad's company for a little bit, and I worked in some other companies. And
What does your dad do?
So he still has the company that sells energy to business, like natural gas and electricity. And so actually I helped create employee training materials for his company, which kind of led me down the path that ultimately has me sitting here talking to you, because that was taking information out of people who were very good at their jobs at his company and then turning it into material that other people could study and understand and apply and also be good at the job. So sales jobs, customer service jobs, and other jobs. And I found that I just liked the process. I liked figuring out the puzzle and how to put all the pieces together and how to explain things clearly and how to break down information in a logical manner. And so I enjoyed that process. And so I started doing that for other companies. In time, it turned into a lot of healthcare providers, so dentists and doctors and physical therapists. And I created materials that is kind of turned into like a specialized publishing company almost, where there was custom work being done, but then there were like standardized materials for how to do the front desk job, how to do the scheduling job, how to do these different jobs that are more or less the same PT to PT. Like if you're going to do it well, 80% of it's going to come down to this. Maybe you have some individual variability and some quirks, and this office likes this to be done a little bit differently and whatever. But and then some consulting and training companies that work with PTs and dentists and doctors picked up my stuff and would deliver. You could think of them as trainings or courses, basically, to dentists and to their staff and so forth. And so I was doing that, and I was enjoying it. But in looking at the bigger picture, I guess it was because I'm thinking at the time that then now we're at the publication of Bigger, Leaner, Stronger around there in the timeline. And again, it was fitness was something that I was into and for myself, and I was happy that I had finally educated myself. Like I knew that for quite some time I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was something I did with my friends. I didn't take it very seriously in a sense. And eventually along the way I was like, all right, I want to actually learn how to do this properly. If I'm going to be doing it 5-6 days a week, I might as well educate myself. And then so I learned about proper dieting and I learned about proper training, and that was my first real transformation, so to speak, of my physique.
And was that just like a bunch of reading that you did, just like doing the research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the training side of things, Starting Strength was one of the early books I came across where I was like, okay, this makes sense. Barbell training, I think the information, and I like Rip a lot. We're friends now. I think the information could be presented in a way that's a bit more accessible to just the average everyday person. There's a lot of technical jargon in the book, but great information, great program. And so that's an example of something I found early on. I found Lyle McDonald's work early on. I found on the dietary side of things, I found Alan Aragon's work. I guess that's also on the training side as well. So I kind of found my way into the evidence-based fitness space, which was much smaller then than it is now. It's obviously now it's not as big as just the Gen Fit space, but it's growing. At that time, though, there were really only a handful of people who were producing true high-quality evidence-based information on how to train and how to eat. And on the dietary side of things, fortunately, that was pretty simple because there was already a lot of good information in the scientific literature. There were already good research reviews there are even better reviews now. Like Eric Helms has written a couple of reviews actually that are really good in just summarizing. Basically, here are all the most important things you need to know if you're a natural bodybuilder about nutrition and calories, protein, carbs, fat, pre-workout nutrition, post-workout nutrition, just kind of runs down the whole thing. But that information was already out there. It has progressed, but it didn't take me too long to find my way to it and to then experience it firsthand. I had come across a bodybuilder, powerlifter guy too, who also pointed me in the right direction. But once you understand energy balance, you understand the basics of macronutrients, you're like, oh, okay, that really actually makes sense, and I can try it right now. And then so I did it, and then I got down to like 7% body fat, and I'm like, okay, that works. There's no question. And then of course there's also the logical side of it too, where when I understood that, oh, okay, so this is what, let's look at bodybuilders, right? These are people who, if anybody knows how to get super lean, it's these guys. What do? Oh, they count their calories and they count their macros, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go down this path because there's probably something to this. And then you find that the science is truly settled. That is something where you can say this, the science is settled. There's no question. That's how it works.
I got to say that, like, it's so interesting. And honestly, I think it's one of the things that I loved about your book so much, where you basically, I didn't count how many times you said it in the book, but you sort of always go back to this idea that it's just like calories in and calories out. If you want to lose fat / lose weight, you have to be eating less calories than you're spending. Like, it's just that simple. And if you want to put on weight, you have to be eating more calories than you're spending. And like that simple formula, if you burn 2,800 calories a day in your normal life and you want to put on muscle, you got to be eating 3,200 calories a day for the most part. And if you want to lose fat, you got to be eating 2,500 calories a day. And chances are, over the course of 3 months, you'll be where you want to be. And I think it is so simple. And like, I also love how you sort of debunk the people that just say, I just can't. Like, I'm doing it, I just can't. And your answer to them is, actually, you're not doing it.
Unfortunately. Now, I understand many of these people, they really do think they are, and they're earnest in their effort and in their belief that they're doing it, but they're not doing it. And that's not even an unfortunately. I'd say that's actually a fortunately, because it opens the door to an easy solution, because the reasons why they are not doing it are commonly just making mistakes, just accidentally overeating, whether it's every day or whether it is concentrated into 1 or 2 days per week. They're accidentally eating more than they think they are. And then you do have some people that, which is strange. I haven't run into this too much myself over the years, but I know that coaches run into this, where people feel a bit ashamed that, like, they know that, they've been overeating and they haven't really been following their meal plan, but they're too ashamed to admit it. So they lie and they say that they have been when they haven't been. And so there's that as well. But a good coach can help people get over that and understand that there's nothing to be ashamed of. You don't have to be perfect with any of this. You just have to be good enough most of the time. That's it. And so what? You overate a few days in a row. Big deal. Let's just get back on track. And there's no real harm done. Maybe you extended your cut by 3 days. Okay.
That's another thing that I love about your book, where it really just says, because I think maybe there are some people out there that can. I know that I've gotten down to 3% body fat for bodybuilding competition. It was insanely hard, really, really difficult. When you listen to a guy like Ronnie Coleman, apparently Ronnie Coleman was at 0% body fat. Actually, he says that he was at -% body fat, which is, I don't even know how that's possible. But like, he was on, yeah, I know. He was on, he was on, I don't know if it was Rogan or he was on some podcast that I was listening to somewhere recently, and I think it was Rogan, and he was like, yeah, when I was at my peak, I was -% body fat. But like, in his case, obviously genetics did have something to do with his ability to put on size, and potentially, who knows? I mean, that he is 100% absolutely positive that genetics did have something to do. And even in Ripeto's He'll even say that genetics, at some level, in the sort of like top tier athlete, have something to do with it when you're at the top.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, just take Ronnie Coleman, right? I've written about this. So I had linked at the time to, it was a YouTube video, I believe it was an interview, or it was just like a talk that he was giving. And he said he started using steroids when he was 24 or 25, right? And so I was saying, hey, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't saying he didn't use steroids. He was just saying that up until then, he was natural. And you go look, and I found a picture of him at 23. He was huge. I found then a picture of him at 16. Huge. He was probably as big as I am, or bigger than I am now at 36, tapped out genetically. This is it. At 16, Ronnie Coleman was, I'm thinking of the picture. Maybe, okay, he was a little bit smaller, but he was jacked. And I don't even know if he was lifting weights at that time. He might have been. And
he was a power lifter. He was powerlifting in high school.
Okay. So at that age, I don't know when he started that though, because maybe that was right in the beginning. Maybe that was before he even started, because he was, in this picture, he was 15, 16. By the time he was 18 though, or 18, 19, he was huge. He made me look small by the time he's 18 or 19. And again, fast forward to 23, ridiculous physique, ridiculous. And according to him, that was before he started using drugs. And of course, then from there, he got to like where he looked like one of those Belgian cows. I mean, he didn't even look human anymore. And so there's no question that genetics play a huge role in muscle gain. I've written about this. I've spoken about this on my podcast. The good news, though, is we can just put hard numbers to it, that the average guy will be able to gain probably about 40, let's call it 35 to 40 pounds, going from just a normal kind of skinny guy musculature to as jacked as he possibly can get, right? 35, probably 40 pounds naturally. If he has outstanding genetics, maybe he could stretch that to 50. And the data isn't, I wouldn't say it's conclusive in this regard, but there's a fair amount of good research on this. And this opinion of mine is based on what I feel is good data and good evidence. And so what that means is, for the average guy, if he hears that and maybe goes, oh, that sounds like not that much. Like, no, that's a shitload. That's a lot of muscle. Think of like a 16-ounce steak, right? That's a pound of muscle. Now put 35 of those all over your body. You are big. Yeah. And any guy can achieve that. I mean, sure, maybe if there's someone who is an extraordinarily poor responder to weightlifting, and that is out there, that maybe they won't be able to get that far, but they'll still be able to get plenty fit. They may have to work longer for less than other people, but no guy is doomed to remain frail and weak his entire life. So yes, genetics is a huge role, especially when you're talking about bodybuilding or high level athletics of any kind. The people who reach the top have probably almost in this. The rule is, maybe you can find some exceptions, but the rule is definitely that they had an inborn advantage that they were able to play to. And often in sports, for example, that then leads. So they were always just a little bit better in the beginning, and then they got more attention from coaches, which helped them get even better. And then they got recruited to the better teams, which helped them get better. And it becomes a compounding thing where that slight genetic advantage in the beginning turns into a huge advantage later,